The Tony Katz Show, everybody. 888-955-TONY. That is the number, 888-955-8669. Holly Bacon, get that link into the chat room there. AllPatriotsMedia.com/listen is where you go to be a part of the chat room. You can also get it at TonyKatz.com is where you can go. We've been talking about the swatting. Joining me right now, his tweets made Breitbart.com that Attorney General Eric Holder can stop this swatting in 48 hours if he wanted to. He is the man who exposed the corruption, the unwillingness to prosecute the Black Panthers, and he runs the Election Law Center, electionlawcenter.org. He is J. Christian Adams. How are you, sir?
Great, Tony. .com. And
.com.
Yep.
How dare you? And what's the name of the new book? Isn't there a new book out there?
Injustice. It's exposing the racial agenda of the Obama Justice Department. Regnery happily got up to number 13 nationwide at Barnes & Noble.
Excellent. Congratulations to you. Injustice is the book. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. You can get it at Amazon.com, I am sure, because they have a little bit of everything. They have Holly Bacon's first work. It was a coloring book, but it was really, really well done. Talk to me about what it is that the DOJ can do, because I have questions about how they can stop this kind of activity from happening. We're talking about the swatting, basically calling and lying about an event to send police to your house.
Well, that's right, but here's how it works. There's a federal statute. It's actually enacted after the Civil War. It's the code section for all of you following along and keeping score at home is 18 U.S.C. 241. 18 U.S.C. 241, and it says that you commit a federal crime whenever you intimidate or threaten somebody because they are exercising their rights under the Constitution. So if you're exercising constitutional rights, as Erick Erickson clearly was, then you are free from intimidation for exercising those constitutional rights. Now, of course, it was originally intended to help people vote, of course.
Right.
But, the statute doesn't limit it to that. And so Erickson's being swatted for one reason and one reason only, and that's because of what he says. That's his First Amendment right to speak. And what I said at the various places is that this could be dealt with almost overnight by the DOJ.
But exactly how? My question is about how do you implement it? How do you know who's making the call, and how do you get them to stop?
Here is the practical way this happens.
Right.
An assistant U.S. attorney, I don't know where Eric lives. Maybe you do.
He's in Georgia somewhere. I know that much for sure.
Okay.
And I'm not outing him there, by the way, everybody. He has a radio show there. He talks about it. He lives in Georgia. Holly lives in Georgia. I live in Los Angeles. But continue.
Yeah. I think that Atlanta, for example, is in the Northern Federal District, the Northern District of Georgia. An assistant U.S. attorney, or let's say the assistant U.S. attorney in charge of the criminal section inside the U.S. attorney's office in Atlanta, picks up the phone. He calls his buddies at the FBI, special agent in Atlanta. He says, hey, we got a citizen of Georgia here who was the victim of this swatting. I want you to open up an investigation under 18 U.S.C. 241. So the FBI agent calls up Erick Erickson, says, tell me what happened. The FBI agent calls the local police, listens to the 911 tapes. The FBI agent might also listen to the 911 tapes from the other locations. I'm sure you've reported on the other swatting incidents.
Yes, I always say Paterico. Holly was telling me it's Paterico. My apologies if I was saying it wrong. Okay, so the right now what you have it as an attorney calls the FBI and says, hey, this is happening, get on it. They then get the information regarding those 911 calls. What happens from there?
Well, the next thing that happens is, look, the FBI has vast resources. It is false to assume that they cannot figure out who this is if they engage in a couple of things, using the full investigative weaponry of the FBI. If it's coming over the internet through something like Skype, they're going to be able to find out. If it's coming over the phone lines, which the more traditional way of doing this, they're going to be able to find out.
It's going to come, it's going to come from a cell phone somewhere. So,
yeah, look, all of these different devices are detectable. They can trace this back. They can figure out who's doing this. It's not. Otherwise, if they couldn't figure it out, you would have anarchy in the world. This is traceable activity. So you find out who it is. It's not rocket science. It doesn't take very long. You identify the person. If you have suspects, you go from the other direction. If you think it's this guy that's being written about, you can do a variety of things. This is not some mystery that can never be solved.
Now you're saying this is somebody from is it from the Attorney General's office? Who is the person who starts this? From the DOJ itself?
Well, now that's the important part you need to understand.
Right.
What I'm saying is assistant U.S. attorneys. An assistant U.S. attorney, there's hundreds of them all over the country. These are people who work in the U.S. attorney's offices in places like Atlanta, Georgia, Jackson, Mississippi, Sacramento, California, Kansas City, Missouri, Buffalo, New York. Anywhere there's a U.S. attorney's office, okay, there are people in each one of these offices who are in charge of criminal matters. Mm-hmm. I know many of these assistant U.S. attorneys who are in charge of criminal matters. So these guys have wide discretion to open up their own investigation of this behavior. They don't need to rely on the corrupted Attorney General in Washington for approval.
So first things first. These attorneys, these U.S. Attorneys, can, and I'm using the term right. These U.S. attorneys, they can open up an investigation.
It's assistant U.S. attorneys.
Assistant U.S. attorneys. My apologies. The assistant U.S. attorneys can open up these investigations, can ask for these investigations on their own. They don't have to go to Holder or any of those cronies in order to get this done.
That's exactly it. Home run, Tony. That's my point.
But if they don't, can the citizen who this has been perpetrated upon, can they call the FBI and ask for an investigation themselves?
Well, anybody can call the FBI. You guys can, all your listeners can call the FBI and ask for an investigation. And I will tell you that justice does respond to that sort of behavior when they get lots of people calling saying you need to do something about this. At a minimum, what they do is they say, well, what is this? What is this all about? And they'll look into it. But I will tell you that an assistant U.S. attorney does not need to rely on Eric Holder or a crowd of people yelling, investigate this. They can do it on their own.
What do you believe the odds are? I mean, especially, we'll get this audio out there for everybody to understand how it works and what the rules are. We're speaking with J. Christian Adams of the Election Law Center, electionlawcenter.com, the author of Injustice. Get it at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, wherever fine books are sold. What are the odds, your thoughts? I mean, you know people. What are the odds that they will respond? Would there be a reason that they wouldn't respond to something like this?
Yeah, because they wouldn't know about it. This is nowhere in the media. Folks need to understand DOJ lawyers are not Google. They are not the all-knowing oracles. I would venture a guess if there's 1,000 they're called AUSAs, assistant U.S. attorneys. If there's 1,000 AUSAs in the country, I'll bet maybe only a couple of them even know about this event. The mainstream media is not reporting it. It's off the radar. So if somebody was actually trying to organize a response, as if I had time to do it. If I was trying to organize a response, I would look up the criminal section chiefs in each one of these places where these victims lived. I would figure out their names. I'd figure out their DOJ addresses. I'd figure out their phone numbers, and I'd call them, and I'd say, hey, I want you to see these articles about what's going on in your district, what happened in your district. I would get the names of the local police chief who had to respond to these calls, and I would put them in touch with the AUSA. There's ways to go about leveraging law enforcement for activist citizens. And it's not just a harp that Eric Holder is corrupt. It's to actually figure out how the system works and turn the ignition key.
Well, that's exactly the conversation we're now getting into, because I don't think that people realize. I didn't realize, for one of the great things about talk radio, about the Tea Party, about what we're doing with new media, is that we are all learning on the fly about how these processes work, that these processes exist, and how we can enable them. Your conversation that you put out on Twitter, I believe you were speaking to Dana Lash. Is that who you were talking to?
Well, I mean, I talked to Dana about this. I talked to Michelle Malkin. There's a lot of folks I'm kicking this around with And, there's a federal law. Go look it up. It's 18 U.S.C. 241. It's laying there in plain sight. Tell me why it doesn't apply. I think it does.
We've got it already in our chat room over there at allpatriotsmedia.com/listen, and we've got people talking about it right now. So it's simply a phone call. You just call and say you want to speak to you said the criminal bureau chief? Is that who it was?
Yeah, criminal chief at the U.S. Attorney's Office. If you can't get him, ask for an assistant U.S. attorney in charge of criminal matters. There's probably half a dozen or more at every office. So
is it phone call? Is it phone calls that works? Is it emails that works? Is it what works?
It all works. All of the above. Look, this didn't happen in Nebraska, so it's got to be focused on the offices where the victims live first and foremost. Mm-hmm. Obviously, once they figure out where the perpetrator lives, then there's other offices that are involved. But this thing can get far along before anybody at Maine Justice really could even realize it's happening.
J. Christian Adams, electionlawcenter.com, author of the book Injustice. Get it now. Injustice, Injustice. Always a pleasure, my friend. It's been a while that we've known each other now from the days back at some other companies, and really love what you're doing, and thank you so much for letting people know the tools that they have at their disposal.
Well, that's right, Tony. Most people don't know the power they have. If they just think about it, they have it. So I appreciate you having me on.
An absolute pleasure, my friends. Be well. Take care. Much more ahead. Stay with us. This is the Tony Katz Show on the All Patriots Media Network.